Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. More on the African Union as it's come to an agreement to draw up a plan which could lead to its withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. The new AU chairman, President Idris Deby, deems the step a necessary one because he believes the ICC targets African leaders. The initiator of this move is President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, who explained that he and his deputy, William Ruto, have been subjected to cases built with weak investigations and pursued with politicized zeal by the ICC. The ICC has always maintained its stance, saying it pursues justice impartially for Africans affected by conflict. Well, joining us from Lagos is former ICC prosecutor, Mr. Charles Adeogun Phillips. Mr. Adeogun Phillips, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, is this a realistic move for the African Union to actually leave the ICC?
Well, the first point that has to be made is that the African Union is not a state party to the Rome Statute of the ICC, and therefore I don't see how the African Union as a bloc can seek to withdraw from the ICC. State parties ICC ratified the ICC in their individual capacities, yes, and not in a collective capacity. Therefore, it remains quite difficult to see how the AU as a bloc can talk about withdrawing from the ICC.
Well, knowing that rules are made to be broken, how do you reckon this might play out if the AU is determined to leave the ICC?
Well, the AU cannot leave the ICC because the AU never became a state party to the ICC.
Okay.
The AU can only prevail on member states of the African Union to take a withdrawal from the ICC. But in any event, even if they were successful prevailing on member countries to withdraw from the ICC, it sends the wrong signals because what are African leaders saying? That they seek to be immune from prosecution for illegal criminal acts. So basically they want to act with impunity. That's certainly not going to send the right signals to the international community at all. So I don't see what they seek to benefit from that. In relation to President Kenyatta's statement, well, that's self-serving. He's been before the ICC, and so has his deputy. So I see that as a self-serving statement anyway, and not necessarily indicative of the general view of other member states of the African Union.
Well, Mr. Charles Adeogun Phillips, former ICC prosecutor, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa. Now, photos have emerged which support the claims of eyewitnesses in Burundi who spoke of mass graves. The photos taken via satellite indicate that the stories of Burundian security forces killing dozens of people and then burying them in 5 mass graves on the outskirts of the capital, Bujumbura, are true. Friday's report by Amnesty International is in stark contrast to that of the Burundian government, which claims that the bodies were soldiers who were killed in battle. In contrast to President Nkurunziza, witnesses say the skeletons are those of rebels opposing the president and that they were pursued and then brutally shot. While speaking to Amnesty International reporters in hidden places, the frightened witnesses are said to have informed the body that President Nkurunziza's security forces killed rebels in their various neighborhoods and that police and local officials later went to retrieve their bodies. Well, joining us from Geneva is the spokesperson for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, I should say, Sessle Puili. Sessle, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, what more do we know about the detection of the mass graves?
Well, the information we've collected on the ground, we have a team working on the ground, is that these mass graves would be linked to the 11 December attacks against 3 military camps and the large-scale human rights violation that followed in the direct and immediate aftermath of these attacks. According to the information we've received, during search operations that were carried out by police and security forces in specific neighborhoods of Bujumbura that are known to be supportive of the opposition. Hundreds of young men were taken out of their homes, some of them tortured, some of them killed, and their bodies taken to unknown locations. Now, we've received allegations from numerous witnesses that some of their bodies would have been taken to the mass graves you're referring to, and that these mass graves could contain up to 100 bodies. Of course, as you mentioned, this requires an investigation. We need to shed light on what happened exactly, how many bodies are there, and who are these people who have died.
Well, Sessle, I spoke with you earlier on, and you were talking about the importance of preserving evidence. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's absolutely vital now to protect those sites, so we're able to keep, if you want, all the proof that could be later on used in a court, for instance, to establish responsibility to identify the perpetrators of these killings. So at the moment, it's very important to protect those sites. You know, at times people, out of goodwill and out of anxiety, want to locate their beloved ones, and so would tend to go to the graves to try to find out whether one of their family members' bodies can be found. Or you can have people who also would like to destroy any sort of evidence. So the protection of these sites is extremely important.
Finally, Sessle, what kind of consequences are we looking at if these mass graves actually do exist, if the allegations being made by Amnesty International are true?
Well, you know, you're talking about mass graves, but the general problem is much larger in Burundi. Since the end of April 2015, we've been documenting large-scale human rights violations, including killings and forced disappearances. We've documented over 430 killings linked to the ongoing conflict. So we're not talking just about these mass graves, but very serious human rights violations being committed. And we've been going public on these violations to ring the alarm bell, if you want, and explaining that Burundi situation is going from bad to worse in the country, and that the international community needs to act very quickly if you don't want the country to get even worse.
Well, Sessle Puli, spokesperson for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa. Still to come on Network Africa, 3 suspects are arrested in Tanzania in connection with the murder of a British pilot who was killed over the weekend. Details in just a moment.